so they called me a hero. Didn't think that could ever happen to me. It all started last week. I was called by the Inspector Sergeant to go on this case about an egg. But this wasn't just any ordinary egg. It was a very ordinary egg. So as I always said, I'd do it, not knowing of the dangers of which were yet to come. How could one man rise so high, but fall so far? My name is John Gillies, and this is my story. It was the year 1957, the 11th of September, 2 weeks after it all started. The Inspector Sergeant told me that the man's oldest son was out, following in his footsteps, stealing eggs. So I told the sergeant not to worry, as I was on the case. Some would do it for the fame, some would do it for the glory, and some would do it for revenge. But not me. I did it for respect. Not to gain it, but to show it. To me, my job wasn't about solving crime. No. It was about showing respect to our country. It just so happens that in doing that, you do gain respect. And it was the biggest loss I'd ever make. I started my investigation by going to the bridge. The mechanic was at the bridge. I asked him if he knew anything about the egg. He told me he didn't know anything. So I moved on, and I headed to the aquarium. A man with a red hat was at the aquarium. I asked him if he knew anything about the egg. He told me he didn't know anything. So I decided to move on, and I headed to the bank. A boy with red hair was at the bank. I asked him if he knew anything about the egg. He told me he didn't know anything. This was the third person on the road who did not know anything. So I headed to the beach, to see if anyone was there who knew anything. A lady with yellow hair was at the beach. I asked her if she knew anything about the egg. She told me to head back to the aquarium. So I decided to ask her questions about people. The answers she gave me seemed untrustworthy, and I did what I thought was right. It turned out I was wrong, as she didn't have the egg. So I decided to turn back and go to the aquarium to question the suspect further about the egg. When I got to the aquarium and saw the man with the red hat, I thought of the woman, and how now I believed her story. So I did what I thought was right. It seems like what you think is right isn't always correct. I decided to go to the desert. I found a butcher there and asked him if he knew anything about this egg thief. But he told me he didn't know anything, so I moved on to the museum. A man with a blue hat and red shirt was there, but he told me he didn't know anything. I headed to the ice and found this man with a pencil and an afro, and I asked him if he knew anything about the egg in question. He told me that the man with the blue hat had the egg, but I could tell this man was lying when he told me he was at the aquarium, as I knew the red-hatted man was there. I decided to follow this lead as it might get me somewhere, but the red-hatted man was too injured to talk. I headed into the city and saw a man with a cat and questioned him about the egg. He told me about a pencil, so I asked him about the pencil. He told me that the pencil was in the Icelands. Instead of going back to the Icelands, I headed to the park and met an old crone there. But she didn't know anything of this egg. I headed back to the beach, but the lady there didn't seem as chatty this time. I decided to go back to the bank and question that kid. I asked him about the egg again, and he still came up dry. I started asking him other questions about people and items. His answers were all correct, but I thought he was a bit shifty. In the end, I went with my gut feeling again. It turns out I was wrong, and it was the Afro Man all along. And that's my story. I rose to the height of fame just to fall further than I ever imagined. If I have learned one thing from this, is don't believe anyone when an egg's been stolen.